What's up, everybody? Welcome back to XJW Diaries. My name is Justin. So, normally I don't get too much into the latest JW news and updates unless it's something big. And we definitely have some big things that came out of the October 2024 annual meeting. Now, I'm not going to go too deep into things. I just want to cover the main big announcements. But I want to do it both from a practical point of view, but also from the point of view of how this impacts the people that are still stuck in the Jehovah's Witnesses. So I think it's really good to keep in mind how these announcements impact that mindset. That's good to remember when we're doing this kind of work, trying to help people to get out of the Jehovah's Witnesses. So I'm gonna try my best to keep this as short as possible, but let's see what the Watchtower is up to. So before we even get into the big announcements that came out of this annual meeting, let me just give you guys the main point of this video. If you don't want to watch any more of it, by all means, go ahead and move on, because this is the main point of it, all right? The Watchtower has to show momentum. That's what they're doing. They have to show some motion, because to a Jehovah's Witness mindset, anytime the Watchtower has a change of direction or new light, any sort of motion is interpreted as movement from Jehovah's chariot. Right? They always have that saying, don't move ahead of Jehovah's chariot. This is how they see Jehovah's chariot moving forward. Anytime we have these kind of moves. And this is key for the Watchtower because these people are not dumb. They are experts when it comes to marketing. Okay, back in the day, we heard about this. They bragged about this to us all the time. How back in the day, they were one of the first to have one of the most advanced printing presses in the nation. They were one of the first to use the sound cars. So, it's these type of things. When it comes to marketing, they know what they're doing. And one of the key things in marketing nowadays is mind share. Mind share is all about what you think of first when a subject comes up. So when I say the word video game, what comes to mind first? Are you thinking PlayStation? You thinking Nintendo? When I say the word smartphone, what comes to mind first? Are you thinking iPhone? And that's a good example there. Because when it comes to smartphones, Apple only has, I think it's less than 50% of the market share. But when it comes to mind share, the majority of people, when they think of a smartphone, they think of an iPhone, even if they don't have an iPhone. That's the power of mind share. And so now when I say the word Jehovah, what comes to mind first? For a lot of people, it's Jehovah's Witnesses. It's that organization that comes to mind first, even for people that aren't Jehovah's Witnesses. You can go into Google right now and you can type in the word Jehovah. You didn't have to type it all the way in, and you'll already see Jehovah's Witnesses pop up. That is how much they have captured the mind share of that word. So since they have successfully linked that name Jehovah to their organization, it's always going to be interpreted from a Jehovah's Witness mindset that any change is coming directly from Jehovah. That the only way to reach Jehovah is through that organization. And this is more important now than ever before, because as we've seen from some of these broadcasts and some of these other announcements where the witnesses have said, don't keep in mind the end. Don't just keep thinking about that all the time. They've made themes about don't lose patience or something to that effect for their conventions. People are starting to lose hope. A big part of that was, of course, the pandemic. For Jehovah's Witness in that mindset, everybody's forced to stay indoors. We're not going to meetings anymore. To them, that rings alarm bells. This is it. This is the beginning of Armageddon. This is it. And then to all of a sudden have everything go back to semi-normal. I wouldn't say it's quite all the way normal, but it's normal enough, right? To have things go back to that for a lot of witnesses, especially the ones that are getting older, that was a big slap in the face. To be told for so long that we are in the last seconds of the last days, and then that happens, and it feels like it's happening, and then it doesn't happen. It really stole their thunder. So they have to make moves like this. They have to show momentum, right? To give that illusion that Jehovah's chariot is moving forward. That way people get that thunder back. And so they truly believe that, yep, we're in the end times. It's go time again. And this is what it's all about. So now let's get into these announcements. But I just wanted to say that because that theme is going to keep coming up throughout this video. And that's the real big thing that you got to take away from this. The Watchtower, with these announcements and with future announcements, it's going to keep coming. They are trying to show momentum. They're trying to show the illusion of Jehovah's chariot moving forward. Because to a Jehovah's Witness, the chariot moving forward means the end is coming soon, which means they can finally get their paradise. So let's start with the first big announcement, the introduction of 2 new governing body members. We just keep growing the list. So we have Jacob Rumpf and JW. So as usual, these are company men. These are yes men. That's how you move up in these type of organizations. You have to show that you are willing to do what the organization asks you to do. I know in my own case, that's when I became a ministerial servant, was when I showed that whatever was asked of me, I was willing to do. And that's without question. That's how it works. That's how you move up. Now, in the case of Jacob, this is really interesting. Before his appointment to the governing body, he was on the Jehovah's Witness service department. So this guy has seen a lot. He knows the skeletons. He knows the secrets. So that's a perfect example of being a yes man, you know? He has seen things that any good-hearted person, if they saw it, would speak up about it, would be a whistleblower about it. He has displayed that he's willing to fall in line and do what the organization tells him to do. You don't say anything. You don't report it to the authorities. You protect Jehovah's name at all cost. And so he's done that. And now he's at the top. You got to wonder, when it comes to progress for getting the 2-witness rule and things like that changed, how does having someone like him in the governing body impact that progress? If you ask me, I don't think we're going anywhere good. If you have somebody like that at the top who's seen those type of things, those type of cases, and we know this for sure because he was involved with some cases in Montana. We know what came out of Montana. So he knows this stuff is going on. Now that he's at the top, what will that kind of person do to prevent these kind of cases in the future? I don't think he's going to do anything. I think he's going to continue their move of putting the organization's reputation first and foremost, which is actually ruining their reputation. Now, from a practical standpoint, adding new governing body members is expected. The existing members are getting older and older. Even though the governing body do live a pretty cushy lifestyle, at the end of the day, they do have to do a lot of traveling, right? I remember a year before I woke up, at my assembly hall, we had everybody's favorite governing body member, Brother Let. He was a special guest. And at the end of the assembly, he stood there and everybody crowded around him to take a picture. And I was right there with him, okay? I don't judge. I was there with him, trying to get a picture with him. And I remember, and again, I wasn't awake at this time, but I remember when my turn came and I was right up next to him, he was just a man. And not only that, he was a man that was starting to go into decline. You can tell he was out of it. He was tired. He was just ready to go home, but he was just doing the thing because, he's a governing body member and people are so excited to see him. He's a celebrity and this is just what he has to do. But you could tell he was just ready to go. And a lot of people saw that too. And that's not to say that he looked unhealthy in any way. It's just that, as you get older, your battery can't hold as much, So the existing governing body members are going to continue to fall out. And we have to have these replacements already in place, already into the program to make sure that there's, the transition is seamless. So if you fast forward 10 years, it's probably going to be all new faces. So again, this is expected. This is normal procedures for any organization. But to a Jehovah's Witness mindset, this is seen as a big change. This is seen as motion, forward momentum from Jehovah's chariot. We have new leadership coming in. Now, it'll be really interesting to see what happens and how it's announced when more of these former governing body members leave the governing body. Right, when Tony Morris left, it was an odd situation, to say the least. So I just want to see how it's handled when, again, a favorite, Brother Let, has decided to leave the governing body. How will that be handled? Now, the next change is something that at first glance seems like a small change, but the more you look at it, it's actually something much bigger going on here behind the scenes. And that is the adjustment of the age requirement for both Bethel and for the Kingdom Evangelizer School. Now, in the case of Bethel, they've changed the age range from 19 years old to 18 years old. Again, from first glance, it looks like a small change. It's only 1 year. But just think about what happens in that 1 year. Around 18 years old, people are usually graduating from high school. If you give them that gap year from 18 to 19, so much can happen. I mean, think about it. For the majority of their life up to that time, 5 years old, 6 years old, up to 18 years old, they've been in grade school. That's been a continuous thing in their life. And now that's gone. And now they actually have time to truly think about their future and really consider who they are. I mean, a lot can change in a person from that year 18 to 19 years old, or just that first year after high school. So what the Watchtower is doing is making sure that their interests come first. I mean, they tell us that all the time. Make sure you put kingdom interests first. Now they're really making sure of it. Now they're making sure that when you graduate high school, you have Bethel already in mind. That's the next step. There is no gap year. There's no time to think about what's next. You already know what's next. They've told you what's next. Now, of course, not everybody goes to Bethel. Not everybody has that goal. And so that's where we get to the other side of this. If you lower the age range to 18 years old, it puts pressure on people that are still minors, people that are children, to get baptized, because in order to get qualified to go to Bethel, you have to be baptized for a certain amount of time. So even though the witnesses say that they don't have any kids getting baptized, what they're doing here is making sure that more kids get baptized. It's just kind of ironic how that works. And again, not everybody has that goal going to Bethel, but we know that the witnesses have this strong peer pressure in their organization. That's like ingrained into their social structure. So when you have these kids that do have this goal of Bethel, or they think that they have it, and they get baptized at a younger age to make sure that they can go at 18 years old, then that puts pressure on the kids that don't have that goal to also get baptized, because your peers are getting baptized. Why aren't you getting baptized? So this is another way that they can keep the young people in their organization, because if all of the young people leave, that's the end. The organization has no real future. It's going to reach a point where it's unsustainable. And it's a similar story with the Kingdom Evangelizer School. They dropped the age range from 23 down to 21. Again, at first glance, it seems like a small thing, small shift, only a couple years. But in those couple of years, especially for a witness, a lot can happen. 21 to 23, a lot of witnesses are getting married. That's a big step. 21 to 23, many witnesses are finally figuring out what their career path is going to be. So by dropping the age to 21, now we can make sure that people aren't making any major life moves before the organization has gotten to them, before we can make sure that they are putting kingdom interests first. Now, to a Jehovah's Witness mindset, again, this is going to be interpreted as momentum, as Jehovah's chariot moving forward. The organization needs more people. They need more workers. There must be something big coming where there's this need, such a need, that they have to lower the age requirement, that things are moving forward, that the end is coming soon, that paradise is just around the corner. That's the carrot that they have to keep dangling. They have to. Because if they don't, I mean, go on the EXJW Reddit page and see how the number of members keeps climbing. That's what happens when they don't. We got to talk about some of the gaslighting that came in this annual meeting. They talked about the beard situation and joked about it, gaslighting their members, making it like it was never a big deal in the first place. And we know to them it was a big deal, because we know for years, if a brother grew a beard, unless he had a skin condition as an excuse that he couldn't shave, but if a brother had a beard, he would not be appointed for any privileges. In some cases, he would be considered bad association. You're going against the grain. And an even more serious way that they did gaslighting was how they seemed to congratulate themselves, pat themselves on the back for their adjustment to how removed people are treated in the congregation. And it is kind of funny how they've changed the term, how they try to distance themselves from that word disfellowshipped. Now they want to say remove. And they make it like this is Jehovah's loving mercy. Again, this is seen from a witness perspective as direction from Jehovah. That's how it's interpreted. But in reality, this is man. This is man trying to figure out ways to keep control, to maintain power. We know that back in witness history, there's proof of this, that they criticized the Catholic Church for excommunication and then later on adopted it. So we were already here before. And let's remember that the issue is not fully fixed here. This is, again, a way to maintain control. You can only be spoken to as a removed person if you are coming to meetings, if you're showing that progress, if you're showing that you are handing your life over to the Watchtower once again. Otherwise, the shunning continues. If you're someone like us out here, even if you left and you're not speaking out, you just left, but you don't want anything to do with the organization, you're not coming back. Guess what? You're still shunned. So it's pretty sick that they are celebrating this as a victory for themselves, especially when this is a rule that may have changed the fate for countless people out there. There's many people out there that got disfellowshipped, and they had every intention to stay within the organization, but they got disfellowshipped and they couldn't live with it. Had this rule been implemented earlier, maybe those people would still be here. But of course, they don't acknowledge that. So now let's get into the last big things that came out of this annual meeting. The first being a change in understanding of the number of anointed ones during these end times. So it was previously thought that as we get closer to the end, there will be less and less and less anointed people. But of course, we know, as has been said by many of us XJWs out here, the number of anointed partakers continues to increase. And we knew that sooner or later they would have to address it. And so this is how they're doing it. So now he says that we need to make sure not to assume that the number of anointed will decrease to a small number as we get closer to the end. Now, of course, this makes no sense because even if you consider the overlapping generation, everybody who's anointed should be pretty old. And I mean, hey, we know what happens to people as they get older. So realistically, as time goes on, there certainly should be less and less anointed people. So, we're just going against simple logic here. But, I guess that's okay if it's coming from a governing body member. Everything they say is taken as fact and you don't question it. So we're just not going to question it. That's just how it is. Another change in understanding, they believe that the destruction of Babylon the Great will be all countries willingly giving over their power to the United Nations. To a Jehovah's Witness mindset, this not only shows that momentum that we've been talking about, but it also puts into their mind that the end could come at any time. There's these signals of when Babylon the Great is destroyed, these signals of when false religion starts to dry up, these signals of how many anointed people are still alive are no longer valid symbols of how to know how far along we are. And now when the end comes is more of a wild card once again. And that's how they need it to be. That way they can keep saying the end is coming right around the corner. We're in the last seconds of the last days, and people can't question it. People can't look around and see, oh, well, there's this many anointed people, so we must have, this much time left. They can't do that anymore. Now, hey, it could be next year. It could be next month. It could be tomorrow. We don't know. So there's plenty of other things that they brought up in this annual meeting, but I wanted to cover just the big things that would really impact the mindset of a Jehovah's Witness. And once again, all of these things that we talked about today impacts them in the same way in that it gives this illusion that Jehovah's chariot is moving forward. Big things are taking place behind the scenes, which must mean the end is coming soon, which must mean that we got to stay close to the organization. Put kingdom interests first, keep our heads firmly in the sand, and, don't question anything. And that's exactly where the Watchtower needs people to be, right in that place where they believe it's coming at any point and they don't question anything. The governing body even expressed in this annual meeting that, changes could come at any time, strange changes. You just got to follow along. And what better way to make people follow along than to have them firmly convinced that things are happening, that Jehovah's Chariot is moving forward. So with all that, I want to thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you so much for your time. Take it easy on yourself. And stay tuned, because I got something special coming up next. This is a new type of video. It's more uplifting. It's called XJW Power. So that'll be coming later this week. Until then, take it easy. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.